with the Great Depression, that was the ushering in of socialism, right? And social welfare. And it was also the ushering in of much larger police forces and the ushering in of technology, and the telephone started becoming a ubiquitous device after the 1940s, right?
Right.
So, and it came in different places in different countries, but the telephone became a very common item by 1980. Virtually everybody had a telephone, right? In the West. And so that situation was, okay, we've got now many more police, we've got many more telephones, we've got vastly increased take in income taxes for social welfare. And so instead of the man of the house being the protector and provider, they've moved this protector and provider role, or they sold women that the protector and provider can be your government, right? And you can marry the government. And so from the time of social welfare being introduced, which says, if you've got a bad husband, you can get rid of him and you can get social welfare. It was presented, because I was around when this happened, right? It was presented in Australia as some women get really bad husbands and, they need to have the chance to get away from an abusive man. They need to have enough to live on, right? And that's a very persuasive argument because everybody knows there are some bad husbands. Everybody knows that, okay, if the guy really is a bastard and he really is beating up on her and the kids, then, she has to have a chance of getting away from him, right?
Well, what about the bad wife? Oh, that's right. That's always been covered up.
Oh, there's such thing as a bad wife, right? There's no such thing as a bad wife. We don't want to talk about that, right? So
we'd be sexist if we did that, huh?
Yeah. If we talked about bad women, we'd be sexist and discriminatory. We'd be women haters if we talked about bad women.
Oh, God. No wonder I'm a woman hater. Damn.
Yeah. You're obviously a woman hater. If you say that more women poison their husbands than men kill their wives, then you're obviously a woman hater. So anyhow, with this social welfare, this was the thin end of the wedge. They sold it to us as, abusive husbands, protecting the women, etc., and appealed to our nobler instincts, which is the way they always do it. But of course, over the last 30 years, it's gone from, subsistence living with the guy who is truly abusive being held accountable for that to, very good living, completely destroying lots of good husbands who've done nothing wrong, right? That's how it's gone. So by creating this social welfare net, having the technology of the telephone so that 911 could be called immediately and police could be at your house within relatively a short period of time, right? And now with cell phones, relatively short period of time, you can hit 911 and the police will be there fairly quickly. So the risk of being home alone is much reduced. The risk of not having a man providing for you is much reduced because all you got to do is get a kid and the government's going to pay you for the next 18 years. So all the options have now moved much more towards the woman, where the woman says, I'm already going to be paid for. I'm already going to be protected. What else have you got to offer, right?
Well, this is where power and greed comes in because the woman don't get enough, does she?
Yeah, and the vast majority of men have not much more to offer than protection, right? That was the mainstay of the value of having a man in the house, right? And so to have, quote, more to offer than just provision and protection, you have to have significantly more money than the rest of the crowd, right? Which is why you're getting this 80% of the women are chasing 20% of the men. Women on 30,000 are chasing guys on 100,000, right? They're not chasing guys on 35,000, right? So what young men are seeing today is a very skewed in the US is a very skewed picture of how things used to be. These women have got these do-nothing government jobs, which are nothing much more than regulating everybody else, applying rules to everybody else and not actually producing anything, and they're overpaid in these jobs. And so they're saying, well, I'm earning $40,000 a year, so I should get a man with earning $100,000 a year. And that's what they're looking for. And they're not looking for, women have never loved men. One of the points that I make to young men is women don't love you. They don't care about you. They don't love you. You as a human being and you as an individual are completely irrelevant. What she cares about is the assets you're going to bring to the table, or as we've spoken about before, are you a bad boy who turns me on?
Women are actually part of the matrix because, like what you were just talking about, Peter, is that, they may, a lot of them may look good on the outside, but they're really wicked and hollow on the inside. And it's just such, and, their outer appearance is such a delusion to sink men in and make them do whatever they want to, and then they don't realize until after the damage is done, is that, most women these days, they have no heart. So do you believe that women today, they're actually part of this illusionary society that we're living in?
Well, I don't think it's just today. This has always been the case. In the first book I wrote, Living Free, there's a chapter in there called Chapter 8, How Are Men Enslaved? And it's a theoretical chapter, of course, but it's how things must have been. And it has always been the case that women present themselves as, I will love you, I will care about you, I will have your children, etc., right? They have always presented that case. But because of the high death rate of the males in any society up until 1945, basically the men died usually younger than the females, or died from wars or work accidents and things like that, right? The women sometimes died in childbirth, right? But the women didn't go marching off to wars and didn't get killed in coal mines or run over by the horses while they were doing the ploughing and all those kinds of things, right? It was very normal for a man to be killed in the course of providing for his family or in the course of some war, right? Mm-hmm. So the women were necessarily trained, and they didn't tell them in this, but the women were necessarily trained to be able to rapidly transfer their, quote, loyalty and affection to whatever man was going to provide for them and protect them, right? Mm-hmm. And so there's never been a level of loyalty from women to men. That has always been a pretended loyalty, so that the man is convinced that she's loyal, and therefore the man will labor up to and including his death, being convinced that this woman loves him. And that has always been a lie. That the woman loves you has always been a lie, and it has been a necessary lie. And the women know.
Because I think most men overall, they know that, most women are deceitful and stuff like that, but they want to have sex, and that's what really holds the average man back from doing what he needs to do, and in terms of figuring out the way of the world, figuring out how women work, so they don't suffer the consequences and stuff. I mean, do you think there's any truth to that?
Well, I would argue that the vast majority of young men don't know how deceitful women are and don't know how manipulative they are. And certainly I was one of those young men, right? I was, and certainly the vast majority of my peers were those young men who didn't know how manipulative and deceitful women are. And many of my peers now I'm 48, many of my peers now will never admit how manipulative and deceitful women are, right? Because the problem is that most of us men do want a woman in our lives, right? Mm-hmm. And I certainly would like to have a woman in my life as my permanent partner / wife, right? Yes. The young men, many of them, not all of them, because men vary in quality, just like women vary in quality and vary in character and what it is they want to achieve in their life, right? But the vast majority of young men would like to have a family one day. They'd like to have, the quarter-acre block with the picket fence with a couple of kids, and they'd like to have their grandkids bounce on their knee one day, right? That is that many children grow up, and that is what many men would like to emulate through their lives, right? Yeah. And in order to get them to do this, they have to be sold the lie about how women are, right? And the lie they're sold about women is that, oh, she will love you for your whole life, and she will take care of you, and if you're a good husband, she'll never betray you, and she'll never be bad to you. And this is repeated to young men all through their formative years. And if you even go on to internet discussion groups, you'll see whenever a man is victimized, the women will say, well, he must have been a bad husband, and if you would just be a good husband, this would never happen to you, right? How many times has anybody who's listening to this gone on to internet forums and it's, oh, if the husband was victimized by the woman, he was a bad husband, and good husbands are never victimized by women. That message is presented over and over again. So many young men, me included, and many men that I've talked to, right, during my time in places like Landmark Education, cannot come at the idea that the women know that they're manipulative, they know that they're lying to you, they know that they take the position they have to do this in order to get the man to be the man slave that they want, right?
You got this dog and pony show, this so-called people trying to raise awareness about a bullying campaign. These people don't care about bullying, man. It's a dog and pony show. It's more done for their own image than anything, man. That's all it is, you know. It's just like when you see all these Christians that badmouth the poor and the homeless for 364 days out of the year, and then one day out of the year they decide to do a food drive for the fucking homeless. It's the same type of shit, man. I mean, you know.
It is.
So when people think that well maybe we'll just be nicer to them. Well, let me tell you something. Here's TFL, even in and of itself, is not a form of bullying, regardless of how nice they are. You know, when you're pushing somebody out of society their entire life because of something that they can't control, and you're shitting and ragging all over this person their entire damn life, is that not? I mean, regardless of how nice they are about it, if they're condoning that as being normal, in that end of itself, a soft form of bullying. And I'm sorry, I don't care about soft form or hard form. I don't care if they're aggressive or they try to pretend like they're my friend and smile in my face and stab me in the back or make excuses to go around a woman's wrong or this or that or the other or whatever this case may be. To me, it's just the same shit, different mask. You know, I'm not one of these people that thinks, oh, just because somebody's nice to me, that means they're a good person. No, because I'm gonna be the first motherfucker to come along and ask myself, okay, why are they being nice to me? What do they stand to get out of it? You know, are they trying to undermine me? Are they trying to manipulate me? And that's it, man. That's what it comes down to.
Well, you know, Warren, you're correct, but it's sad that it's had to go that far. Jared, you got anything you want to add to this?
Yeah, it just seemed like in the American school system, they're not. You know, they're teaching you how to act in society, because if you know, in the United States they tell you that, you know, everybody's free, everybody's their own person to do what they want to do. But when you step inside these American high schools, what do you see? You see a class system. You see some kind of monarchy going on. Which you have the juniors and the seniors. They're normally the most popular and the most, you know, powerful students. They normally range between just, you know, the most attractive, you know, the athletes and the cheerleaders and stuff like that. And then you got the you know, the lower class of freshmen and sophomores who are considered the nerds and the geeks who are just trying to get by, but these are the ones that get picked on because they're actually excelling. So you're already seeing you know, what do you call it? A socialized system in your American high schools just based on how the kids are acting.
Well, that's true all through the school systems in the English-speaking world that I understand about. You have segregation of the students by, quote, alleged capability. You have particularly the female teachers being totally unable to control what's going on. And so when in the absence of maintenance of what you might call order in the classroom, the children establish their own pecking order. And, you know, the kids establish their pecking order based on strengths, mostly the boys, and the girls based on their little cliquey groups, and who will then undermine each other. And one could well argue that that kind of environment is a perfect replication of what they're going to find out in the real world, because that's exactly what happens out in the real world. Although the people who are in control use more like financial means than outright violence.
Well, you know, Peter, you're correct about that, but there's something here. You know what? One of their favorite cop-outs, and I watched senators say this, I've watched congressmen say this, I've seen parents say this. First off, they tell you that the bullies outgrow being a bully. The second thing they want to tell you is that, well, everybody's been bullied in their life, and you just need to man up, toughen up, and deal with it.
Can I say something on that? Because it's funny when they say, oh, well, bullying stopped after high school. You know what? No, that's funny coming from a lot of these politicians, because a lot of these bullies come up and become fucking politicians or police officers somewhere where they can gravitate to power.
But what happens in our society today, 30 years ago, 40 years ago, when I was young, somebody who stood up for somebody else was respected. And it was said, you know, that's a good thing to stand up for those who are less able to stand up for themselves, right?
Yeah.
And that type of behavior was encouraged 30 or 40 years ago. Today, when I stand up and say to people, no, it's not okay to be stealing children or doing this, that, or the other, people go, well, who made you the self-appointed sheriff, or what makes you think that you can do this? And it's virtually all feedback from somebody who's doing something useful in today's society.
Well, yeah, they're trying to rationalize their own evil. They're trying to call you arrogant for pointing it out.
And then another example of what causes a kid to feel rejected in high school is that, say you're in class and the teacher is trying to break down a problem for the students. Then one student, he steps out of the grain and he offers a new suggestion for the teacher to break down the problem with, you know, a new variation to break down the problem with. But what normally happens in this situation, the kids are going to look at that student like he's out there or way out in left field somewhere. You know, it's like, why are you trying to come up with something? Let's hear what the teacher has to say.
But it's interesting, though, man. Bill, you'll like this. You'll like hearing this. I don't watch a lot of TV or nothing. I mean, but I'm around it constantly because my family's always watching it. I was walking through the other day, and some show that comes on TV called The Big Bang Theory. It was a bunch of, like, college nerds or whatever, I guess, and there's, like, one female on the show. Right. Well, this one of the nerdy guys comes up to her, and of course he's, you know, talking like typical bad boy type stuff because he's trying to play the bad boy, you know, because women respond to bad boys, you know. Well, you know, these guys have been TFL his whole life. Well, this lady just cuts him down. It's about like, you're a loser, you're ugly, you'll die miserable and alone, and just cuts him to pieces and just destroys the guy right there. And I'm like, this is what people are being fed. That's what you wonder why we have TFL.
Women in America, when you bring up the truth to women, particularly women in America, but Western women in general, their response is one, completely idiotic and without any thought required, right? But their response is always, "You're a loser. You're stupid. You couldn't get a girlfriend, you're not worthy of a woman, you've got a small penis, you can't get laid, you're going to die alone. Oh, this is this is the standard response from women, you know.
Yeah.
They're like, you are such hate-filled shrews. So now I just say to women, you know, I don't want to have anything to do with you hate-filled shrews. That's what I get every time I put the truth in front of you. Nothing but hate. So nowadays I just tell them, Western women, in the 99.9% majority, liars and hypocrites. And I don't want anything to do with you. And I live in a country where that's not true, right? Where the women are actually nice women and nice to deal with. And you women need to go and sort yourselves out. And by the way, we are bringing in our new courts, and we will sort you out, right?
Yeah.
Regardless of whether you women want it or not, you're about to be held equal before the law. And there's no point discussing anything with a Western woman. I have talked to I actually sat down in emails and talked to at least 500 women, right? And at least 100 of them in detail. And in every single case, but one, they don't help. And in virtually every single case, they're just full of hate. And if you stop and think about this, the one and only woman in the world, and I've spoken to at least 10,000, right, and interacted with about 500, the one and only woman in the world who is actually helping me is actually a grandmother, a woman in Sydney who is a grandmother, whose daughter refuses to allow her to see her grandchildren. And this woman has actually been up in front of the same magistrate as is on my video and refers to David Dunkley as a deeply evil man. So the one and only woman who's interested in actually helping me is a woman who's denied access to her grandchildren by her vindictive daughter. So she's in a similar place to very many men, right? And so she can sympathize with the men to say, oh, this is what happens to them. The mother says, you can't see the child, and suddenly you can't see the child even if you're the grandmother, right? Yeah. So this is being propagated through TV and media and all the rest of it. The Western women are being fed this stuff that is just rubbish.
What I've noticed is really odd is that, you know, and it's the truth too, is that even when women stand up against the wrongs that women are doing in society, man, they get slammed not just by the sisterhood, but also by their manginas.
The consistent theme is anybody who mentions the criminal activity of women and the fact that women are not held accountable for criminal activity. Forget just a little bit of bullying here or there, or some nasty comments, etc. I'm talking about things that are considered criminal activity. When women commit things that are considered criminal activity, and you point that out and you say this person should be held accountable before the law, and this person should make remedy for their crimes. If it happens to be a woman, you will be attacked, right?
Yeah.
You get attacked for it, and then when the woman is put up in front of the court, 90% of the time she gets a slap in the hand, okay? Compared to a man, she'll get a slap in the hand, and that's deliberately done because they know that if they let the woman off easy, that it's going to raise the men, and then that's going to keep the division.
It's going to continue to provoke men, and it's just like the email that I sent out to my list today, Bill, which you would have gotten, which I sent out, half a dozen cases of recent headlines of women being bashed or killed or whatever by men, and particularly the young feral boys now. And we're keeping a forum, and we've got now over 130 entries in this forum of women being bashed or killed by angry husbands or angry men or feral teenagers. So this idea of not holding women accountable before the law, or when they actually do get dragged into a court, giving them a slap on the wrist and sending them on their way, has made it clear to the men that there is no justice for a man who's a victim of a woman, and they're dispensing justice themselves. Right?
Oh yeah, no doubt. What I find it absurd, too, is you can get these manginas. Like I said, if you do got a woman that speaks out against what women are doing wrong, and you get these same damn manginas and come up here and they're going to tell a woman that she's a misogynist. because she's not Miss Anderson enough for their taste.
Yeah. Well, one of the things we're doing is the manginas, or ignomanuses, is a name that I coined. And ignomanus is a man who ignores a rights violation of a man, thereby damaging us all, right?
Yeah.
So any man who ignores the rights violation of a man is what I call an ignomanus, right?
Yeah.
And so I take guys who are making public comments and I stick them into the ignomanus forum, right? And then I send them the link and say, thank you very much for being such an ignomanus. I've copied your public comments to this forum, and now when Google comes along, Google search will find your name and people will find you here and see these comments and see how you promote criminal activities against men.
Okay. Warren, I want you to tell Peter your opinion of marriage.
Well, marriage is just all it is a form of enslavement. What marriage is a eugenics control structure, okay? They teach people what to select for from the beginning through the school days and shit like that, okay? And as you get older, I mean, you know, some of it goes on autopilot. People will, to some degree, like women will pick their own men and stuff like that to some degree, but they're conditioned to select for certain trades, okay? So you've got this system of marriage, okay, where you're contracted now to be with somebody. You sign that contract. Now you're under contract to be with them. You know, which is in itself is a form of economic enslavement. It's saying, like, you have to be with this person. And if you don't want to be with them, then you got to go through our courts and get cleaned out. And, you know, which, you know, I'm of the mindset that if I really cared about somebody, I don't want her to feel like she's contracted to be with me, and I don't want to be contracted to be with her because that's not love. That's enslavement. You know, that's how I feel about it.
Yeah, but women don't love men anyway. In the Western world, the marriage contract, when you get, quote, married, you have a civil marriage, civil being Roman Civil War, and you sign a marriage certificate, right? Now, what the government then does is make the presumption you want to sign a, quote, marriage contract, and makes the presumption that you want to be subject to the government's marriage contract, right?
Yeah.
And the government's marriage contract is a three-party contract where all the proceeds of the marriage are owned by the government, and you and the woman own nothing, including your offspring, right?
Yeah.
And that's why at the end of it, when somebody says, I want to end this marriage contract, the government says, well, we own everything, so you need to come to our court and we will, you know, very generously give you back some of your property, some of our property to you, right?
Yeah.
And the man gets nothing, the woman gets most, but the government gets a fair slice anyway, and it's just a control mechanism, which is why in the first book, Living Free, there is an affidavit and a default notice that shows any man who wants to do it how to terminate the contract from the beginning for marriage, right? So let's say you got two small kids. In that position, the woman can go at any time to the family court and clean you out for the next 15 years, right?
Yep.
And it happens every day of the week. So, and a lot of men are complaining about this and saying, this is bad, this shouldn't happen, we should have some help, something should be done about it, right? So I come along and say, okay, well, I hear a lot of men complaining about this, so I'm going to invent a way to rescind this contract from the beginning, and I'm going to test it out on myself, and I'm going to see if it works, right?
Yeah.
So I test it out on myself, and it works. And so I put it into the book, and I say, okay, all you tens of millions of guys out there who are fearful of the family court, who would like another way to go about this, here's your answer. And it's for free, right?
Yeah.
And, you know, nobody used it. And also, the other thing is, because this marriage system that we have today through government is criminal, it's not just biased, it is a criminal system designed to enslave men. The book recommends a, quote, marriage agreement which is a common law agreement where all the terms and conditions will be placed down. Now, women, I've said to men, you can rescind your marriage, and you can then sign up a marriage agreement if you still want to be married. And if the woman doesn't want to sign a marriage agreement, you should get your ass out of there, because you know what she's got planned, right? If she's not willing to put on a piece of paper what she's willing to bring to the table and how she's willing to act and how she's willing to relate to you, and not this bullshit of, oh, I love you, and if you want me to write anything down, then you don't love me, which is all complete crap, and no young man should listen to all this stuff. If the woman's not prepared to be equal before the law and write down on a marriage agreement what she's bringing, the terms and conditions, and most importantly, the termination clauses of this contract, right? Because women have made it clear that marriage is no longer until death do us part. Marriage is no longer for richer, for poorer, right? They told us it's not, so we have to respond, and the response is in the book and says, you write down a marriage agreement. Otherwise, I'm rescinding our marriage and I'm out of here. Now, the ability to rescind a marriage is unilateral. A man in any English-speaking country today can rescind his marriage, 2 pieces of paper, 6 weeks, delivered 4 to 6 weeks apart, and you are no longer married in any sense of the word. And you can walk away.
And you know what's ironic about that, man? Is we like to live with this myth, and in some degree, yes, just comparatively, I guess women were comparatively better 50 years ago here in the West than they are today. It's only by comparison. But even if you go back then, because we like to live with this myth, there's things that are so much better back then. But even, like I said, even if you go back all the way to the hunting and gathering days, it's like you said, I mean, you know, the man had enslaved himself to the woman to be protector and provider. You know, we live this myth that women had it so hard before feminism. No, they didn't. They had it easier than the men. The men, when women were out there working their factory jobs, and they're complaining about how hard it was working in a factory, the men were dying in a war. Working their factory jobs, and they're complaining about how hard it was working in a factory, the men were dying in a war.
Yeah, the Angry Harry has done many, many articles pointing out that at no point in any civilization that he can find have women had it worse than men. Ever. Now, I went and looked as well. I can find no evidence of any civilization anywhere at any point in time where women had it worse than men. Why?
Well, debatably the Middle East. I mean, I could debatably see the Middle East, maybe.
Not even close. Unless you have gone and lived in a Muslim country, most men believe the lie that women in the Middle East are dealt with more harshly than men, and that is a lie. If you know Muslims, and if you go live in a Muslim country, you will find out that the men have it far harder than the women in all the Muslim countries, right?
Yeah.
So please don't repeat the lie that in the Middle East the women have got it tough. They don't. They have it way better than men.
Do you think that's one of the ploys that the government tries to use on Americans here, that that the Muslim female is oppressed, so that's why we need to go over there and teach them a lesson and set them free? Do you think that's one of the ploys that they give U.S. people?
It's a little bit of a ploy, but you notice that none of the feminists are really worried about the quote oppressed women in Muslim countries, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's much more of a ploy that they're different to us and they have such bad rules for women, etc., etc., and it's just a divide and conquer thing. It's not really about going over there and having wars.
My intention wasn't to lie. My intention was just, I'm not, which is, I have never been there before. I got to go on what little information I have here. So, I wasn't trying to lie. I was just trying to be, objectively. Without having been there. From what people say and what I could gather, and there's a possibility.
You're just repeating the lie. Well, and lots and lots of people repeat the lie that women are oppressed in the Middle East, right?
Yeah.
Lots of people repeat that lie.
Well, you
But
know what, Peter, that's actually the image that's been given to us, so that's where that comes from.
Yeah, but I lived in Saudi Arabia. Now, Saudi Arabia is the most strict Muslim country in the world, and I lived there for 15 months. And I can tell you that the women have it much better than the men, right?